All right, everyone. Welcome to DG360 here. A lot of talk about Death of a Spaceman. Perhaps with everything that we've been seeing in terms of ship designs, in terms of what's coming up with Invictus and the new ships, perhaps looking at Death of a Spaceman more seriously. Let's listen to our friend Space Tomatoes, friend of the channel here, and see what he's got to say about it. And maybe we'll chime in a little bit and talk about it as well here. Oh.
You're probably thinking I'm a goner. But the thing is, I've died 1,000 times.
This trailer was a little bit weird, but in order to understand how weird it is and why people really care, we're going to talk about Death of a Spaceman. Welcome to the next Feature Watch.
I'll tell you why I think it's important. Consequences. Your decisions should have consequences to them. Let's talk about what happens when you choose something. Perhaps it's a little bit unsavory to some people. Perhaps you're a freelancer that veers a little bit more piratey and you do something on the edge, perhaps, and you decide to do it because perhaps it's more profitable for your organization. And what are the consequences of those decisions that you make? Let's see.
So back in the day being 2013, actually, kind of crazy. This has been going on a while. Back in the day, Chris Roberts talked about his inspiration from Demon Souls, talked a little bit about how Eve does its own respawning, and got into what he thinks Star Citizen should do in terms of death. Trust me, this is important. I also feel that if everyone can be cloned easily, it fundamentally changes the structure of the verse. You now have a universe of immortal gods that can't be killed. Death is just a financial and time inconvenience that has no further consequences. If I want a living, breathing universe that has a lot of the dynamics of a real world and is inspired by the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, immortality for all is problematic.
You're probably thinking I'm a goner. But the thing is, I've died 1,000 times.
The flip side is that while permadeath is realistic, it is not a lot of fun if the first time you're on the wrong side of a dogfight, you lose everything and have to start again. The death mechanics that I have in mind keep a feeling of mortality and history without making it frustrating or killing the fun. But what does this mean, Chris? He actually does a little bit more in that same document. Check it out. Basically, you'll be making your character, running through training simulations, and preparing yourself for the game. But once you have a character, Chris says, I see each character you play having the ability to die multiple times before the character is finally put to rest.
Which makes sense. You know, you should wear yourself down until you can't eventually respawn again. You know, at some point, the parts give out. No matter how many parts they strap onto you, eventually you give out and you die. And then what happens? What are these consequences? What are the sum total of all these consequences that happen to you? And how can you do it in such a way that it's actually not going to be a red flag for people and make them turn away and go, oh, screw this isn't fun for me anymore. You know, like, to me, fun is when somebody actually has to think about their actions in an MMO. You know, my fun is, like, if you're doing something, be careful what you're doing. Now, in order to support Death of a Spaceman, you have to have good security, and that's just something that isn't in the MMO experience right now. You know, because of where we're at, the security, the AI that's in there, the NPCs in there, the security mechanics that are in there, I don't think at this point can support Death of a Spaceman properly. I don't think there's enough systems yet to even contemplate inserting Death of a Spaceman in yet without people getting completely enraged and not understanding the development process. My 2 cents.
Think of this like lives in an old school arcade game.
Yeah, they were.
Science in the future is far more advanced than today. Medicine has the ability to bring people back from what would be considered dead in today's world. Wait, but isn't that cloning? Every death creates wear and tear on your body, depending on where you were hit and how you died. Your character may require a new body part, which can either be cybernetic or organic. Eventually, after too many deaths, your character's body will just give out, and instead of waking up in a med bay, you'll be attending the funeral of your fallen character from the eyes of the beneficiary you specified when originally creating your character.
Awesome.
So the whole idea of this is to make death feel substantial because you're losing reputation, maybe some money on insurance. You lose some of your inventory that you had with you, your ships, whatever. Like, it's hard-hitting losses.
Yes.
But it's not like you're losing everything you've ever worked for. That's the whole point. They don't want you to lose everything all at once, but they want you to be able to die multiple times from little small things that eventually lead up to one big death where you then lose that, reputation hit or whatever. Yes. There will be some opportunities to regain some lives or do a reset. Some of this could be through in-game missions, or it could just involve paying a lot of money to a specialist on a remote med planet that is doing stem cell research. Now this all continues to start getting more into like crazy land with that kind of stuff, but you get the idea. And this is a philosophy that was kept throughout the entirety of this development. They've referenced it in different talks. They had videos about it. It's been referenced when Chris and Sandy came on camera together. It's always there. In fact, back around 2021, when this was all becoming more official in the game with the health system coming in 3.15, they actually updated the lore terminology and made it all kind of make sense based on what we were seeing in the game and what was supposed to be happening.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with Backspace. He kind of echoes what I was saying earlier, is I feel like they should hammer in more of the core tech before making any more iteration on the Death of a Spaceman mechanic and inserting it in. If they go too soon on Death of a Spaceman, I think that'll just ruin people's concept of what Death of a Spaceman is supposed to be. Personally, I think they should wait. This should be like a back burner concept. This concept's been on the back burner for ages, but for good reason. Because if they introduce this wrong, people are going to have a bad flavor to savor, and they're going to say, peace out, we don't want it. And then that's going to piss off a lot of hardcore old school backers that have been in it for this very reason. I being one of those people that love the idea of Death of a Spaceman because it introduces consequences. So you just don't have little kiddos doing whatever the F they want in the MMO and completely making it a run and gun situation. And they just keep coming back doing the same thing, right? This, in essence, if Death of a Spaceman is implemented correctly, will be security in and of itself. You get what I'm saying? Because you have to be careful of what you are doing in the verse. So this should be applied towards the back end of this of the development, in my opinion. That's just kind of how I see things. That's just how I see it.
They were really adamant on this idea that this wasn't exactly cloning. This is like, you're still technically linked to that body through a specific token of your consciousness, kind of, so you can't be in two places at once. Think of it kind of like Altered Carbon system, where you can...
Yeah, and I understand that as well. Sketch says this conversation is happening because they're making Spawn easier. And I think they're doing that right now just because of the stage that we're at, Sketch. So I get that as well. I'm talking big picture, Sketch. I'm talking... I kind of see past this, the where we're at presently. I'm kind of looking long term,
be going from one body to another, but you can't be in two at the same time. This actually led to the possibility of things like getting permanent scarring or cybernetics, like he said in the earlier description, just things that would let players know you've been through some shit and you couldn't figure it out without getting a replacement limb or something. We've actually seen cybernetics already shown in concept art. This is stuff that was shown all the way back in 2021 that I have in my video archive, just the kinds of things you might be getting replaced as you die and keep losing these lives. And then if you just wanted to send things home, we actually had a pretty big talk with Chris Roberts and Richard Tyrer about this whole system and how this was supposed to work, I think back in 2020 again.
Death of the Spaceman was sort of an idea to give an association with your player character in the game, in terms of this is who you are, and you want to keep yourself alive as possible, as much as possible, and identify with your avatar as an actual real person and character, and you care about and you want to keep alive. And then finally, when you've had one too many close calls or lost one too many battles, you no longer can be resuscitated, and you have to pass on essentially to your next of kin, which will have you call out basically who your next of kin is.
I love Jared's faces in reaction to when Chris is talking. I literally could watch that shit 24/7. Just watching Jared, watching Chris talk is the best. Look at Jared's facial expressions.
when you're sort of doing your character creation. And that idea is whether it's passing it down to your son or your daughter or a relative or a friend or whatever it would be, some kind of meaningful
I'm not even focusing on that Aether as an issue, right? I'm kind of going towards the latter half of the development on Death of a Spaceman, right? Aether says, I don't necessarily agree with all this hoopla. Just because you can respawn in any medical bed doesn't necessarily mean the Death of a Spaceman is borked. And I absolutely agree with that. I think this is just something temporary that they're experimenting with and they're doing so people can kind of just go and do what they want as they please right now. The verse is not finished by any stretch of the imagination, and they want asses in seats. So I think that this is personally just like a temporary thing that they're doing in order for people to get on with their play experience, but they're not forgetting the core philosophy of Death of a Spaceman. And I don't even see why people are making an issue of that. I think in the long term, they're going to go back to the core reason Death of a Spaceman is important, is on consequences. And I think what they're doing right now is just like a temporary thing, personally, right? So that for people that are getting like truly upset, I think people aren't really looking out in the long term of everything and really understanding the development process. So that's something I should probably address as well, right, Aether?
A consequence to dying in a game. So like, most games you play, modern games anyway, you die, you respawn back, a few seconds before you die, and you keep on doing it again. So it doesn't really feel like there's much consequence to dying, and a lot of times your gameplay approach is pretty sloppy. I mean, like I know when I'm playing, a standard FPS shooter in the story mode, I just keep blasting into people. I don't really think about it. I die, I start again.
Like maybe you shouldn't be just running into a bunker and dying over and over again. Have we seen that happen? Nah, I don't think they'd tell us to do that. Over the past few years, we have seen some changes that make it a little bit harder on you when you do die. Things like your inventory getting lost. But there's also just never really been that key feature that keeps people from backspacing when they're in a tough position. Richard Tyrer actually showed back in 2020 that he really wanted to change this.
Death has a real meaningful consequence. Like in Demon Souls, the amount of times you get to the boss and you're like, you get to that 1%. And your palms are sweaty and you're moving.
It's a justified reason why, though, that people are getting upset, because they're worried that they might go back on this because of what they've seen with master modes. Because, a lot of people with master modes, myself included, I know Backspaced is another gentleman here right now. We're not too happy with master modes. I think it's kind of shallow what they've done with it, but I also think they'll continue to develop the flight experience. I think the flight experience has a lot of runway in front of it, pun intended, man, in order to get it down the way that most of us in the PvP realm would like it. I think that they're still experimenting with it. I think that it's still far way off. I think master modes might not be the I'll tell you where it seems like it's a step in the right direction. It's step in the right direction seems in the functionality of when you want to quantum out and the shields drop. And I get that. But in terms of other facets with master modes, I think it's a little bit more shallow of an experience. I've been playing the new master modes for a while, and I'm not quite sure I like it. So it's kind of like too many who've experienced master modes. Now they're kind of thinking about, okay, what are they doing with Death of a Spaceman? The fact that it's easier to spawn in the beds, and this becomes an issue, and they think, well, maybe they're going to take back all of the hardcore talk that we're seeing here in 2020 with Death of a Spaceman. No, I don't think so. I don't think it's an issue. I think what the issue is when they implement it, how they implement it, and if they don't do it right, that people are going to say, fuck it, we don't want Death of a Spaceman. I think that's the bigger issue, and I don't think people are seeing that yet, but that's where I see the future. That's where I see the future of Death of a Spaceman is there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh, no, we don't like it, because all they want to do is run and gun. So let's just see where this goes. Right now, I think it's more of a temporary kind of issue. I think they're just making it easier now for spawning because of where they're at in the development process, and that people can get in and play quickly and do the things they want to do. Consequences should come afterwards once server meshing is smoothed out, once we get the play that we want, which is still far way away, and then we can talk more seriously about Death of a Spaceman.
In the mouse, and you're like, no, you know, that
Righty,
all of a
man,
sudden changes. You know, when you get to the edge of that cave, and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to go in there, and if I find something in there that's not friendly to me, then
Sketch,
you know what, I'll just respawn. No, now it's going to be like, well, if I respawn, what happens to my ship? You know, am I going to lose my gear? I'm going to have to come back to it, because obviously physical inventory ties into it, and then will I lose some of my DNA integrity, and how's that? And all of a sudden, it changes the choices you make along the journey that you're going on.
So then this trailer comes out, and it actually kind of gives the idea that players are supposed to just like throw themselves out there and get killed and figure something out, which is a valid way to play a game. It's just not necessarily lining up with what they've been saying about Star Citizen this whole time. Now, they've been, shifting focus a little bit and making things a bit more interesting to people who want to get into action quickly. But I do think that there's going to be some balance between getting into action quickly and sticking to what they've been wanting to do with the game, and how they've been building these features out to make death matter a little bit more. If you think this means Death of Spaceman is going anywhere, it's not actually. Jared had to come out on Star Citizen Live and specifically say, hey, we see what you're saying, don't worry, it's not going anywhere. Actually, doing more research here, I see that Tyler Witkin, the head of community management at CIG, also made a pretty big statement about this on Reddit. It reads, the NERSA's medbeds respawning capability is a small component of a wider and connected set of systems that we dubbed some time ago as Death of a Spaceman. This framework encompasses everything related to players' health, death, respawn, and legacy. While the respawning system is currently active in the game, other related systems such as regeneration, degradation, inheritance, and additional components of Death of a Spaceman are yet to come online. It remains our intent for dying and respawning to carry a notable impact, adding more meaning to your adventures in the verse. They shouldn't have to say all this stuff because of the trailer, but they are still confirming Death of a Spaceman being a thing and a focus. What I'm getting from this might be that we're just going to see a lot more lives have to be ticked through for Death of a Spaceman to actually, end your character. Specifically, he's talking here a lot about the effects you get from dying, as opposed to the fact that we won't be dying as much, which makes me think that maybe we will be dying more in Star Citizen. You're just going to have to deal with consequences a lot more. And the real kicker of all this is that these ship commercials are actually, at least back in the day, supposed to be in-lore commercials for the citizens living in the game. So this is like a commercial that's going on TV and telling these people, yo, go die, because it can be fun. Like, I don't know, it feels off compared to what they've always been trying to show us with this game. For reference, actually, here's a look at the Lynx Rover trailer from last year, basically the same kind of vehicle. I feel like this gives a more realistic idea of what they've told us about the game in that regard. We don't know what exploration is going to be, luxury gameplay, whatever that is, but like, you can kind of imagine this being what you would do. The Medivac can be a thing. It just feels like the way that they advertised it doesn't make sense for what the game is supposed to do. And the fact of the matter is, this is not really a game problem so much, as we've seen from their answers. They're still planning on Death of a Spaceman. Yeah, you might have to live more lives, maybe some things will change. They're balancing this game in real time. They're building it as we go, and some stuff has to change. I get that. This is a communication problem, though.
It's absolutely a communication problem. He's right. The second they start seeing these types of issues, they just need to get out there and talk about it. They also need the heads of the development program, including Chris, to get back onto these pillar talks again. I've said this numerous times, man. A lot of people were calling pillar talk. Remember pillar talk? For new people, pillar talk were like the heads of the development of Star Citizen that would get on and they tell you where they're at and their feelings about where they were at in the development. That needs to happen once every quarter. That needs to happen 4 times every year. There needs to be pillar talks again, and they need to get people back like Tony, Chris, John Crew, all these guys back in a room together talking about things once again. I think that was super helpful for people's mindset on where the game was at.
Have been joined by a medical
Pillow
gameplay
talks,
update.
right,
This could have been joined by a blog post that talked about medical gameplay, or Death of a Spaceman. Could have been brought up in the last letter from the chairman, maybe an ISC. It was talked about at SCL, but even then, we don't really know much more of the specifics besides, like I showed before, what Tyler said on Reddit. That, I think, was the best information we could get as to where this is going to go in what direction. But we've gotten some clarifying information on it. Just it comes up again because of
Ranger
communication.
Mo? Welcome.
And we could get into a discussion about medical gameplay and respawns and which ships and vehicles should allow them, but that's a different video. The timing of this wasn't good. The timing of the other changes with respawn beds wasn't good when the Cutlass Red came out. Those types of things do reflect on the community, and trailers coming out like this reflect a lot on newcomers, and I do think that it's kind of important to make sure you're selling the long-term vision of this game. If that's changing, we could really use that kind of update when you do make huge changes like this, because the community is here for Star Citizen.
The community that's here for Star Citizen that has been around the longest is in this chat right now. The oldest of the backers, the veterans of Star Citizen, remember all the promises, all the stories, all the stretch goals, because they've been with me on this journey. I've been on this journey since 2013, 2014, and Death of a Spaceman and other mechanics in the game are very important to us, and we want to make sure that Cloud Imperium stays true to those narratives, right? And as the game becomes more mainstream, and as the game brings in newer faces on a level that is quantifying, quite literally, you got more people playing Star Citizen now. You got more popular people coming into the Summit, Shroud, all these guys that are very popular streamers with large fan bases coming into Star Citizen. The more new people coming in, the more it starts to worry the veterans that remember where we've come from. And I get it. I get why it's really important that we stay focused on these narratives and what it was that we pledged for, because as newer people come in, you're going to see a lot more new faces than a lot older faces that you remember. You're going to, you know, like a lot of people coming in right now don't even understand what Death of a Spaceman is. They don't even understand the concept. They're coming in from Shroud, man. They're coming in from Run and Gunning, man. They're coming in from Dr. Disrespect. They're coming in, you know, from BRs. They're coming in, you know, like they're coming in. They just want to boom, 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 boom. You know, like we got to talk about the skeletal structure of this game. The reason why people want to play this game, we definitely need to have the consequences in this game, and I totally understand why people are a little bit worried right now, but I can assure you that this will stay a constant, that there isn't anything to worry about. And I think one of the reasons why we don't get more communication from Chris and others that are the bigger wigs in Cloud Imperium is because they understand the game is more successful and more people are coming in. So they're like, we got the numbers, we got the sales, it's okay. And that's not the right mindset to have. They need to make sure that the core, the very core, the veterans, those people that were here from the beginning are satisfied, that we're satiated. So they have to get on and communicate. So I like what Tomato's saying. I like what he's saying.
But when things keep changing out from under them, it's hard to keep up when...
Yeah. I think you misunderstood me, Sketch. But yeah, no noob, nobody new into this is upset about Death of a Spaceman because they don't even know what Death of a Spaceman is. A lot of people that are making content right now are mining salt, and they just want to throw it all over because it helps them with their views and it helps them monetize their channel and make them money. So they're making it more of an issue, and it really is a non-starter. That's why when we started this and we watched it, I wasn't even focused on it because I don't even see it as an issue. I don't see this as an issue because I see that they're going to work through it, and I know why they're doing it. I think the bigger issue is down the road and how they implement Death of a Spaceman and making sure that it stays in, that the consequences of your actions have, that there are consequences to your actions. Otherwise, what's the point? Because you want an MMO like that. That is what makes a good MMO. That's what keeps it dynamic.
And there's not a lot of messaging on it. So I think that could help. That's my take.
All right. I like what Tomato's saying. Really good talks. And like I said, Death of the Spaceman will remain as hardcore as you can believe. That is something that they will not abandon. And just because they're making spawning easier with med beds and just because it's easier right now doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be in the future. Perhaps Tomato's right, and you'll have a lot more deaths to go through before having to worry about the ultimate consequence of passing on everything that you've accrued in the game and willing it out to your next of kin, which is essentially you creating a new character. So, you know, perhaps there will be more deaths on that route, but regardless, I think the core mechanics of Death of Spaceman will be implied, but we can't even get close to it until we get the server meshing, until we get core mechanics that are needed to get us to Death of a Spaceman. Death of a Spaceman, to me, is way far out there. What they're experimenting right now with is all these vehicles coming out, having beds in them, and being able to have people spawn right away, because it keeps the asses in seats right now in terms of the development stage that they're at. They're bringing in a whole bunch of people, and they want everybody just to be able to spawn up real quick and get right back into the action, because that's one of the biggest gripes right now amongst all players, both veterans and rookies. And the thing is we're going to have to revert back to a much harder style of play down the road. And that's after server meshing gets smoothed out the way that we want it to be. And that's another talk for another time. And that's what the real issue is. That's where the salt really comes in. And so if people are getting accustomed to this right now, that could be an issue. If people are getting accustomed to spawning right up and getting right back into the action right away, you know, and then we take that away down the road, that could also be an issue. So we have to be careful about how we're putting this in, man. We gotta be careful. What's up, Myark? Welcome to the channel. Let's get back to the after party. Yeah.